Our guest today, Dr. Rebecca Lindberg, is the Senior Lecturer in Nutrition Sciences at Deakin University. Rebecca will help lead our discussion this morning to address issues around food security in Australia, what effective community projects are currently working, and can we help to ensure our neighbours and communities are food secure. I'm Ian Bunston. Welcome to Monday Matters. Welcome, Rebecca. It's a privilege to have you as a guest this morning.
Thank you, Ian. Good morning.
Now, Rebecca, before I get into some questions for you, just want to make sure I've got this right. Now, you're part of the Faculty of Health / School of Exercise and Nutrition Sciences / Institute for Physical Activity and Nutrition. Do we have that right?
10 out of 10, Ian.
It's a long-winded statement, isn't it, eh? Rebecca, as a public health nutritionist, are you interested mostly in nutrients and how they affect the body, or is your work broader than that?
It's a great question, Ian. And as a nutritionist, the foundation of our work is about nutrients and about energy requirements that people need to live well and thrive, and at every life stage, from pregnancy and infancy all the way through to later in life. So my training is in nutrients and understanding what do bodies need every day and what are the dietary habits we need to take on over the weeks, months, and years that we live. And so guides like the Australian Guide to Healthy Eating, which is the plate model, a lot of people would recognize, that kind of summarizes an ideal scenario from both an energy intake perspective and also those nutrients, what vitamins, minerals, big macronutrients do people need to be eating and accessing every day to live well. So I use something like the Guide to Healthy Eating as kind of my benchmark, my standard for a healthy diet. But my research definitely goes beyond thinking about nutrients and the impact they have on the body to instead thinking about what are the systems and programs and ways in which we access food, we buy food, we consume food. How can we create those so that they're fair for everyone, they're healthy for everyone, and they're also environmentally sustainable?
So, Rebecca, what is food security then? And considering Australia's wealth and strong food system, shouldn't we expect every Australian to be food secure?
Yes, we might expect that, Ian. And sometimes people are a little bit surprised to hear about food insecurity happening in their own neighbourhoods. Some people have actually lived with it their whole life and struggled with it, and they're not surprised at all. So whilst Australia has a strong food system and a whole lot of food production and a high level of standard of living for many people, we do have communities that are disproportionately impacted by barriers to affording and accessing healthy food. So food insecurity is when a household is worried about feeding themselves and their family. They're making compromises on their nutrition. They might be bulking out their meals, eating cheap meat, maybe even going without meat sometimes as a coping strategy rather than a dietary preference. And at worst, they can even be skipping meals, hunger, even for an entire weekend. And certainly for children or anyone at any life stage, when that becomes regular, food insecurity can have a really big impact on physical and mental health. And we think conservatively, 1 in 8 households in Australia are food insecure. And it probably is a topic that's got a bit more coverage of late. It's less surprising, perhaps, that food insecurity is playing out when we talk about food prices, when we've had the pandemic. I think more and more it's impacting larger groups of Australians.
Mm. So, Rebecca, it is a very interesting discussion in terms of, the various um, groups in our society that are helping in this area. But I'm thinking in terms of the global kind of context, what's happening overseas in science and evidence that we could learn from here? And equally, how do Australian scientists shine and lead the way in your particular field?
Yeah, well, perhaps if we think about some global exemplars first, um, I think we can learn a lot from scientists and public health nutrition programs and policies all over the globe. And that's the great thing about science and research. We can access an evidence base. It's often in English, and it's, highly available to scientists worldwide. I've been lucky enough to collaborate with some Americans from the Center for Nutrition and Health Impact over the last 5 years. And I'm not saying the United States of America is perfect when it comes to household food security and nutrition. They definitely have challenges too, challenges that are often mirrored here. But I was really impressed by the American sort of circumstances for a few reasons. One thing they do very well is they capture data incredibly well at a national standard and regularly on household food security. So every year, surveys go out nationwide. So they have a really strong understanding of how many people are food insecure and which pockets of the community, whether it's geography or family type or cultural background, etc. They've got a really good evidence base to understand who and where food insecurity is playing out. And I also think the Americans are really leading the way around infant and pregnancy food security through nationwide programs like WIC, which is the Women, Infant and Child Program. It's means tested. So basically, if you're on a very low income, you can ensure through the WIC program, you get regular access to vouchers so that you can buy yourself and your family and your babies or during your pregnancy key supplements and nutritious food that is really, really vital for that life stage. And we don't have anything quite the same here in Australia. So that's one of the areas that I'm looking at in my research. Could we bring a WIC style program here to Oz? And then, in terms of your other question about Australian scientists leading the way, I was lucky enough to meet a former World Health Organization leader in nutrition, a global leader, just a couple of months ago. And he actually shared with me that he felt Victorians in particular, he was here visiting, were really excellent at community food projects that created a multiplicity of benefits. They were working on the environment, they were working on employment, they were working on nutritious and cultural foods. So these community food hubs, he felt were just absolute worldwide leaders. And maybe I took it a bit for granted, Ian, how good these projects were because they're just down the road from me and they're par for the course working in public health nutrition that these types of projects are around. But he really helped me understand how we have some best practice right here in Victoria.
So, in some ways, this is a great segue to my next question. Have you personally yourself been working on any community projects locally, in our community in Victoria, even maybe across Australia, that you found really inspiring?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Ian. I do love working in partnership. So a lot of the research projects I work with, they're trying to solve real world problems for CEOs of nonprofit agencies or maternal and child health nurses that are supporting food insecure families. And I did meet that WHO, the World Health Organization leader, through a project here at Freshwater Creek called Common Ground. And Common Ground is a community food hub. And over the last couple of years, I have led an evaluation of 7 community food hubs that were funded by Vic Health to do, as I said earlier, they're local food for local people and they're designed to create system-wide changes, and have multiple benefits. So regenerative agriculture and local sourcing of food, but food that can be perhaps subsidized or grown in ways that make sure that it's affordable, or provided to community members to make sure it's affordable. So it has those nutrition and food security benefits built in. And quite often they're social enterprises, or they have employment pathways and training as well. So they're using that food to create so much positive community impact through something so simple, local food to local people. So projects like that I find really inspiring. I'm also on the board of a social enterprise called the Community Grocer, which is 10 years old, providing affordable fruit and veggies in social housing estates across Melbourne, and in other sites in sort of outer Melbourne. So our 6 different markets really help democratise nutrition, making sure everyone can afford culturally appropriate, nutritious food in beautiful, vibrant market type environments. And yeah, over the years, non-profits like Second Bite, Oz Harvest, Eat Up Australia, I could go on. There is just so much innovation in the community space, and it's really a privilege to be the type of researcher that can help provide an evidence base to support that work or evaluate that work or think about new ways of enhancing those types of frontline community food security projects.
They sound wonderful projects indeed. I'm just thinking of our very local situation for all of us. It could be in our local suburb, community, neighbourhood. How can we, folk that are listening into this morning, ensure that our neighbours and our communities are food secure? Because it may be right just down the street, we have folk that are challenged in this space.
You're right, Ian, and I know you're already involved with community food security initiatives through Vinnie's. So there's probably 3 really clear ways, and perhaps those that are on the line this morning, you're already involved, and that's wonderful. So volunteering or giving some of your time or donations or good quality food to frontline services, whether it's Salvation Armies or local food pantries, etc. That can be one demonstrable way to learn about food security or to help support neighbours. I mean, another way is an innovative area, I think, are social enterprises. So if you're already catering an event or you're looking for a particular service, if you can purchase from a social enterprise, and there's a number of these developing in many communities, and Melbourne has some excellent examples of these. So if you're buying a gift for someone, why not buy it from a social enterprise? Because any money raised by that non-profit is going to go back into their food security or other community development projects. And then third and finally, I think, we're all citizens with voting power. Well, I assume everyone is. I shouldn't. For those of us who do have that voting power and privilege, we governments have policy levers absolutely at their disposal to make big inroads in fairer communities, fairer wages, better housing policies, all of these are the drivers of food insecurity, and our social protection systems, those that are reliant on unemployment benefits, they're often the ones who are the most food insecure, and they're lining up for food pantries. So wherever you can, whether it's a conversation with a local policymaker or using that voting power that you have at every level of government, wanting, a fair go for every Australian, that's a really important way of tackling poverty, which is the biggest underlying driver of food insecurity.
Mm. Well, Dr. Rebecca Lindberg, it's been fascinating speaking with you this morning. Not just about, like, we've touched on nutrition, but the fact that we've got moved into this space about food security and the way that it has such broader connections and benefits for our wider community. It's wonderful to hear we've got people like yourself working in this space. So thank you for sharing your story today, and thank you for being our guest at Monday Matters.
Pleasure, Ian. So nice to connect with this community and yeah, looking forward to discussing with you all a little more.